I'm Terry Lalone, and I'm the owner of The Great Escape Mind, Body, and Soul. And this was just a thought of mine last November. Because I had experienced the Braintap for, at that time, 4 months. Within a month's time, I could feel a big difference in my attitude, my thoughts, my confidence, and my sleep habits. For some of you that know me, I was a pathetic mess for a few years, and saddened most of my entire life from childhood, from abuse, and other reasons. But that carried with me throughout my whole life, and I did not know that until I should have died a year ago in a car crash because of my fears and my divorce and death in my family that had occurred 5 within 6 years and 3 in 1 year's time. I couldn't cope, and I had left my marriage 3 years prior and had not seen my children for leaving my husband for the 3 years. My son came back to me, and my family that had died and my children that had left me, I felt alone, and I didn't know how to cope, and I became drinking, and I was pathetic, and I was lying, and I was disgusting. So, with that being said, other things happened. A stalker, and I totaled my new Yukon Denali around 3 maple trees from drinking. And I was in the hospital for over a week. Had 50 upper broken bones, 2nd and 3rd degree burns from the back of my head down to my waist. And I thought, I got one of 2 things to do here. Either stay where I am and pour me, or pick myself up and be who I really am. How do I do that? Counselors weren't helping me. I felt like they were my sounding board. But by having a car accident, I knew I needed to go to a chiropractor. And I ran into a chiropractor that had the Braintap and laser lipo. I was overweight from all my stress and knee surgery. So I experienced a Braintap twice a week for within 3 weeks' time. Within 3 weeks' time, I felt amazing. I let go of what I was hanging on to and wondered, why the hell am I hanging on to this shit for? Wow. What was I thinking? And the more I used it, the better I felt, and the more I slept, the more confident I became. And I started going through the whole Braintap series, from children to Fort Drum, PTSD to nutrition. And I thought, holy shit, this is going to help everybody. And I'm going to sell this like Verizon sells cell phones. And I was overwhelmed with happiness, and I probably went too far with my shop with happiness because of the Braintap. Thank you, by the way. He saved my life, and I feel amazing. And I also do laser lipo, which melts your fat into liquid. It's a laser technology that is innovative. There's no downtime, and you can lose 1 to 2 inches. It's a technology that taps into the stubborn fat that weight and exercise just doesn't hit. So I put the 2 together, and I do it too with the laser. I put the Braintap for nutrition, so you are aware of how you're eating and sleeping and how you behave and why you're overweight. So, and everyone here has addictions, whether it's a cell phone, media, drinking, smoking, TV, Netflix. So if you want help, go to the Braintap. But the neuroscience part of it, I'll have Dr. Patrick Porter. This is Dr. Patrick Porter, the co-founder and the owner of Braintap.
And my wife usually travels with me, but she's decided to get what I had 3 weeks ago. So she's at home, she didn't make it. And she was going to fly to New York tomorrow. I'm meeting with Dr. Oz. We do a lot of work with his nonprofit. And he works with children, teaching them, educating them to eat well and to de-stress. So we do a lot with them with the Braintap. We don't use the headset with them because most of the schools can't afford that. We just use the app. So they just do it with their headphones, and they can do it in their centers. So a little bit about me, just so you know. I've been doing the Braintap, or a version of it, since 1986. I was one of the team of 6 people that invented this technology, and we started using it. Back then, nobody knew what it was. It was before cell phones, before CDs, before anything, so it was like something from outer space, that people would try out and use. And it didn't look anything like what we have today. It didn't look like the nice headset. In fact, it's only looked like this in the last 2 years. Before this, it was a lot of wires, and the first ones actually you had to hand manipulate. You needed a therapist, so you'd watch the brainwaves on something called the mind mirror, and we could adjust the brain, the frequency of the settings. So we've come a long way from that. Now, all of our 800 sessions have their own algorithms. And I'm going to be explaining a little bit about what that is and giving you an experience of what the Braintap is. But just so you know, when she went to that chiropractor, we have 1,600 clinics in North America using this. We're in 80 countries. I go to places like Sweden, India, around the world to some of the biggest conferences because people are starting to use this in their therapies. We have one center in Provo, Utah that was just featured on national television for addictions. And it was about their addiction program, but about 5 minutes of the show was about the Braintap because it's so interesting to people. They've never seen anything like it that they put it on there. And like you were asking, so why haven't I heard of that? Well, I'm wondering the same thing. Why haven't you heard of it? But because we've sold about 500,000 of these since 1986, but it's just not been in Watertown until a few doctors here are using it, and then you opened up the Great Escape. So as we share that, our hope is that this is something that, has everybody here done the Braintap now, or some people here not done it? Okay, if you haven't done it, then maybe before you leave tonight, take 10 minutes and do it. Because some of the things I'm going to explain to you, it's like explaining atmosphere to a fish. You just don't get it. And a lot of people go, how can that do that? Well, we've been to a lot. I'm going to show you some of the research that we have and talk a little bit about that. But this has been well researched since the 80s. There's a lot more research now because we all want to get old with our memories. We don't want to get old and forget who we were and forget our families. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and why we need brain fitness more than ever, because we're all getting better looking and more intelligent with age, and we want to keep that brain going. There's only a one-way trip here. We don't get to go like Mork from Ork and go backwards. So we're gonna have that, and it has a lot to do with our attitude. It has a big factor, but it also has a lot to do with what we eat, and I'll talk a little bit about that too. So, and then as we work here, this is what Dr. Oz says. He says the next frontier of energy is energy medicine, and the reason they call ours energy medicine is that I'm going to show you how light is actually, you are a photic being. When you walked in this room, you were giving off photons the whole way. In fact, you were exchanging them with everyone in the room. So those people that have high energy give off more of these photons. But our bodies are designed to be outside more than it is, especially living up here in the Great North. Right? I grew up in Michigan, so I know we had more cloud cover than the only state that beat us was Washington. It's pretty much dark all year in Michigan. That's what you can get. And so people have what they call seasonal affective disorder because our body needs light. Your body is like a cellular, a solar panel. And if we don't, it's not just bald people that have those solar panels that you've read about. We're all solar. If we don't get that light, so what we've done is we've seen the many benefits of light now. And I'm going to kind of share that with you tonight too, and why we use light, sound, and vibration. A lot of people have used sound before, like they can get apps on their phone, they can listen to meditations. The biggest difference is most of those do not do what we call full spectrum brainwave training. They only do singular brainwave. Without the light component, you can only get to alpha. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the different brainwaves, but I'm trying not to be too technical. But hopefully I've simplified it enough that everybody will understand it. But we operate in 5 different primary brainwave states, and I'm going to talk about how you can exercise those. The problem now is when you sit in front of a TV for too long, you're generating a lot of alpha because the TV operates at 10 hertz frequency, so it puts people into a trance. Have you ever heard that? You ever walked up to somebody watching TV and you go, hey, I've been talking to you, and they just don't snap out of it? It's because they're in alpha. They're with our grandkids, I told my son, if we're going to have the kids for the day, I don't want them to watch TV before we come over and get them, because it ruins them for the whole day. It changes their brainwave frequency. So when I showed that to him and he started noticing it, like if they had soccer that morning with no TV, they perform better on the soccer field because it disrupts our natural rhythm and cadence. It's okay to sit and watch Netflix in the evening or something. I'm not saying, I do watch TV, but I don't. They say that the average person watches 50 hours of television every week. So I'm wondering who's watching my 50. You know, there's a lot to do out there in the world, you know. And, we were talking about this when I was growing up. There's 9 kids in our family. We're a good Catholic family, so they figured that rhythm method out a little too late. And, you know, we weren't in the house. We didn't want to be in the house. We wanted to be out there playing. You know, if we weren't playing some sport one after the other, it was crazy. So, but now people have, my grandkids will never experience something we used to think was a great, on the weekends, if we stayed up to watch the Star Spangled Banner and the flag at night and the TV station was going off, that was like a rite of passage. Now TVs never turn off. You could go there and watch an infomercial at 3 in the morning if you wanted to, or, you know, whatever other shows on. So we're getting this constant barrage, and we want to talk a little bit about that. So what happens is we call this brain stress. All stress is brain stress. So I want everybody to stand up. Remember I told you I was Catholic. So we're going to stand up, we're going to sit, but we're not going to kneel. I promise. So while standing, what I want you to do is balance on one foot and do a circle. So while balancing on one foot, you're doing a circle. And while you do that circle, go ahead and write your name. So you're doing the circle and you're writing your name at the same time. Notice what happens. Okay, right. So I wanted to hear a little laughter. Go ahead and sit down so I can explain that. What you just experienced was a little bit of brain stress. We call it a neurological storm. So the right brain, for those of you that were doing the circle really well and then forgot how to spell your name, you're a right brain thinker. For those of you that wrote your name and thought, hey, I got this thing, and then you looked down and your foot was going analog like this, you're more of a left brain thinker. Now the difference is a right brain thinker under stress usually gets loud and angry and emotional because that's what drives the right brain. And actually they think the louder that they speak, the more somebody hears. You know, that's the way it works. And the left brain person actually believes under stress that they can think their way out of stress. But the problem is their best thinking brought them to stress in the first place. So your best thinking isn't going to help you out of there. We need to upgrade that thinking. Einstein's probably best known to say that you can't solve a problem on the same level it was created. You have to go to the solution state. Then with the solution in mind, you return to the problem and solve it. Okay, so that's kind of what the Braintap does. Just so you know, we're going to get you out of your environment for a few minutes, whether it be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever the session length is. And while you're there, your brain is solving problems. But unfortunately, when most people sleep at night, they don't sleep. They're in bed, but they don't sleep. And that's because your brain does some very unique things, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute when you sleep. So what happens to most people is this chronic stress that we live in. It's chronic, everyday stress, low-level stress that happens to people. There's a lot of ways we can do that. We call it sympathetic syndrome, where your body gets so sympathetic that it doesn't know how to turn off the gas. So think of the sympathetic like the gas pedal and the parasympathetic like the brake. And we need to have downtime so our body can rest, recover, rejuvenate. We have another system of the body called the neurohormonal. Think of that as your backup batteries. If everything else gives out, your biological system is going to take over. That's the worst thing to be using, though, because guess what? You only have so much of that. It's like a bank account. When you withdraw it, you either have to replenish it by eating healthy, doing really good things, or you start borrowing. So a lot of people have borrowed against the future. There's the old saying of the guy who was so old, and he says, man, if I knew I was going to live this long, I'd take better care of myself. So you need to act like you're going to live forever, but live today like it's your last. There's a saying like that. So don't be so paranoid that you can't do anything, but you want to really prepare that you're going to. They say that our body should live to 147. I don't know about you. I have some family members who live to some really old ages, but never 147. You know, and if I live there, I want to be still doing things. You know, I want to be active and and so your brain controls everything. If you have brain stress, you have stress in the rest of your body. So when you think about this fight or flight, when you're in this chronic stress, you could be taking the world's greatest vitamins. And guess where they're going? Right out your elimination. And it's not that all vitamins do that. So most medical doctors will say, oh, you have very expensive urine. That's not really true. But you are if you're under stress, because what stress does, it doesn't digest food when you're under stress. What happens is it says, we can digest that food later. We're worried about this saber-toothed tiger hunting us down and killing us, so we got to keep going, even though we don't have that level of stress. But now we have the stress of, hey, I just sent my kids a text, and they haven't responded. What's going on with them? What's happening? How many people have cell phones here? Right? If you send a text, how quickly do you want a response? Right away, right? In fact, if it's really important, you'll text them again. And sometimes you'll even call That's what kids do, right? They sometimes will even call. They go, why don't you call? Well, I did call. No, I text. That's not calling. But there's a dopamine response that happens in the brain. When they send a message and somebody sends it back, it's just like that little rat in the maze that gets a dopamine hit, which is very addictive. And the brain goes, wow, I want that again. So they start texting again. And that happens with, it's not just with games like these weird games that kids play on their phones or on their computers, but it's with everyday things. So when those things happen, our brain gets habituated. They now say that our brain works more like Google than it used to work very differently. How many people remember when we could remember phone numbers? Right? I still remember my very first phone number, 32807. It was very easy. Everybody had 5 numbers. Now, if I lose my phone, I'm pretty much screwed. Yeah. I don't know. I've got to go back it up or go find those numbers because I don't have to remember numbers anymore. It's there. And also, you'll find that people go, well, I must be getting old. No, we all have state-dependent memories. That means if you did something in the kitchen and you remembered something there, you might have to go back to the kitchen to remember it, because this reality that we live in acts like a GUI interface, graphic user interface. So this world becomes our interface to our memories. That's why it works like Google. The memories are all there. In fact, every person on earth has a perfect memory, no question. It's the recall of those memories. And that happens within our nervous system. So if we're under stress, our body says, we don't need to remember all those memories because we're stressed out. All we need to remember is what's in front of us right now. And so we call that the reactionary mind. It's not a very good and safe way to be operating. Because if you're operating in reactionary mode, things become very stressful. The world happens very quickly, and it seems like there's no time. Because as soon as you drop out of beta consciousness, which we're going to talk about, you drop into a state of alpha, that's a daydreaming zone, that's a creative zone, that's where time seems to be suspended. That's why Einstein said if you're with a beautiful woman for an hour, it seems like a minute, but if you're sitting on a hot stove for a minute, it seems like an hour. Right? So it's all depending upon what you're doing. So there's 2 billion people out there, we believe. Now it's more, because I heard now that the average out there in the world, 1 out of every 3 people is having a sleeping issue. If you're not sleeping through the night, incredible bad things happen to you. Number 1, you're not resting, recovering, and healing your body. There's a lot of chemical reactions that happen, and the number 1 pharmacy on earth isn't on the corner. It's not CVS or whatever. It's not Rite Aid. It's between your ears. Your brain can release any number of 30,000 different neurochemicals if you think the right thoughts. That's why they know people who are happy-go-lucky live longer than people who are negative Nellies, or Debbie Downers. If you ever saw Saturday Night Live, where she walks in the room and brings there are some people, they walk in the room and the lights dim. We call them energy vampires around our house. And some of them are family members, so you can't get rid of them. On the holidays here, they're going to be showing up. Oh no, Billy's coming. Or whoever. But they rob you of your energy. By the time they're done, you're exhausted, and they're feeling great because they feed off your energy. We're always feeding off energy. That's why you want to be around positive people and do positive things and be active and engaging in your life. And that's why you want to step outside yourself for a moment and do these meditations. If it's not this meditation, pick something that works for you that's going to help you to learn how to breathe, learn how to relax, and get back on track. You have to take that time. There's a story in a very good book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's a very good book, but nobody can do those 7 things. I don't care. If Jesus was alive, he wouldn't be able to do those 7 things. There's just no way. But one of them, they come upon these 2 guys, and they're cutting down a tree, and the guy says, hey, why don't you stop and sharpen the saw? And they said, no, we're too busy cutting trees. And he said, well, if you stop and sharpen the saw, you're going to cut down more trees. No, we can't. We're too busy cutting down these trees. It's counterintuitive. You've got to stop and reboot. So, like, we put in a wellness center that's kind of like what you have, but it's in Harley-Davidson in Kansas City. And because the CEO used the Braintap at one of the clinics, and he says, hey, I want to put this into our factory. So they have a 10-chair center where people can take wellness breaks instead of coffee breaks. And now they've actually measured their productivity in the afternoon has went through the roof. Because before they were tired. As you work through the day, you're going to get tired, you're going to get sloppy, you're not going to be as effective, you're not going to move as well. So now you can reboot, replenish, and recharge your brain by doing a 15 or 20-minute session. So, and we're in quite a few other companies, but that's one that I like to talk about because it's Harley, So there's different companies like that. So let's see, some of you took this scanning, but let's see what happens when you do one session under the Braintap. This is somebody before, now this happened to be a medical doctor, His name is Mark, and he was driving from Oklahoma to Indianapolis to an event. And I said, hey, this would be a good case. Let's see what your brain looks like. Because you know how when you drive 10 hours or 12 hours, what your brain looks like, it's not pretty. Or you feel like, oh my, I'm brain dead. I need to just go to sleep. And he felt that way, but he had to stay all day in a seminar. Because you get these credits, right? If you're a professional and you got to be there, or they don't give you the credits. So I said, Mark, let's do the scan. This was his scan before. He was only using 40% of the neurological functioning of his brain. After the session, he boosted up to 88. So this is, not everybody gets this kind of gain, but I'm going to show you the statistics. We did 50 of our patients in New Bern, and I'm going to show you the study what we did to show MIT. And we found that of those 50 people, the average gain after one session was 30% neurological improvement. So this shows the brain and what happens after one session. Now, why does it do that? We're going to feed the brain light. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this on some others. But what light does is we're going to bring in photons into the brain. The brain's going to take those photons, and if the cells, the mitochondria, at the center of the cell is a little engine that drives that cell and gives instructions to that cell. If that cell is, the lights have went off, the energy's drained because maybe you're not in the right brainwave state or you're not energetic, the cells start to shut down, especially in the brain, because it uses 20% of the energy resources of the body. It only weighs 3 to 5 pounds, but it uses all that energy. So it'll shut down because it wants to conserve energy. But what this light does is called photobiomodulation. It's going to borrow, if that cell isn't working right, it's going to borrow a photon. It's going to kickstart that mitochondria, and it's going to start working again. Now, you might ask, how long is that going to work? About 72 hours. Because nothing in the nervous system stays for more than 72 hours. It's going to try to go back to your psychological norm. Now, if you did a Braintap session every day, you're going to improve that norm. In that study we did, those same people, 30 days later, what they improved became their norm. So that 30% improvement, now they had that improvement over 30 days. And it just kept improving. Now, you can't do better than 100%. But our goal at our clinic was always to get people's nervous system to 80% or better. We figured if we had an 80% solution, that's pretty good, because most of the clients that we would see were operating at less than 20%. And I'm going to explain some of that in a minute. So if you're working at less than 20% effectiveness, it's going to be kind of hard to go through your day. It's going to feel like you're walking through mud all day or running with a parachute behind you. You're going to be tired at the end of the day. Maybe you want to sit down and watch a television program or a movie and you find yourself passing out because the body finally says, enough's enough. I'm ready to cash in the chips for the day. Well, it's normal to get tired at night, but you should be able to pick when you want to sleep instead of just falling asleep at the couch or in the easy chair. Now, this is a study we're doing, and one of the reasons we're up here with Fort Drum is when we work with a lot of military people. In fact, we have a website that's going up called Breakthrough PTSD, because we've had so much results with traumatic brain injury. So I want to talk a little bit about that. This happens to be an IRB. What that means is the University of Kansas proved that the Braintap is safe, that it's not going to hurt you. The only negative side effect to the Braintap is you might wake up feeling positive, well-rested, and want to get something done. I mean, there's really no negatives, unless you have a problem with photaics, like you're epileptic or something like that. Then we wouldn't use the visor lights. We would just use the lights in the ears because they wouldn't affect them. But they're not going to get as much of a result, but they're still going to get a result. The lights have a big part to play in what we're doing. I'm going to explain that in a moment. But this study, what we find is that if you're in the military, anybody here in the military or been in the military? Okay. So for those in the military or been in military service, you know that you got to operate at a certain level while you're there. If you're at wartime, you can't go, I'm going to take the day off. When you're out there, you're going to get killed, or that might happen, or get hurt. Something will happen. So you're on, what are you on? You're on ready alert. You're in sympathetic overload, and you're very vigilant, and your brain gets habituated to that. It says, I don't know if to, and then you see a buddy die, or you see an injury happen, or you see something crazy happen that you wouldn't see when we go to the grocery store. These are things that, just horrific things. Even the way they treat their people over there sometimes. There's just bad things that happen, and they're seeing it every day, so pretty soon the brain starts to think, this is normal. This is the way I have to wake up every morning. I have to act like this, and my sleep isn't very deep because guess what? In the middle of the night, I might hear a siren, I might be called to action. I can't go too deep, because what if I'm sleeping so soundly I don't wake up? The repercussions of that are not like your mom saying, you're not going to get TV tonight. You know, you've got a sergeant or a colonel or whoever it is, you know, kicking your butt out, and you're getting ready. So you never get the deep sleep that you need. And I'm going to talk about deep sleep in a minute, why it's so important. So that happens, habituates the brain. Now they've done their 3 tours. Back in before, and even Vietnam, they would send our soldiers one time to war. They'd come home, they served, that was all was necessary. Now they're sending them back 3 and 4 times. So it's not just happening once, it's happening again, it's happening again, it's happening again. So the brain is just getting, that's why we call it traumatic brain injuries. And every one of us in this room have had traumatic brain injuries. And I know that because I have 2 grandchildren. And they get their heads bumped around all the time. I mean, little Eli likes any countertop that's about right here, you know, and he'll smack it, and he'll just get up and do something. I'm going, oh my God, I got to get him on the lights. Because I know that he just did some damage. I played football, so I know I've done a lot of damage. We used to joke and say I've been under way too many kickoffs. Now I know that that's really bad. But with these military people, what's happening is they come home, they're in high vigilance. Then when they come home, they're having parties and celebrations. It's really high alert. It's great. Everybody's fun. But then after a couple of weeks, family says, you know, I've had enough of this. You know, we're going to get back to normal. Well, the soldier can't get back to normal because the brain's been habituated for this kind of stress. So what can happen is they'll create the stress in the home. They'll create the stress in the environment. They'll create it so they feel normal. Now everybody else is saying, hey, what's going on here? Who's this guy that came back? Or who's this gal that came back from service? Because the brain doesn't know how to handle it. So what we're teaching them, there's 2 things we're teaching them. One is we're teaching them the grieving processes that we have. When you look in the Braintap, we now have a whole series for grieving. And they go, why do we need that? Because any life change needs a grieving program. Because your brain has habituated to those memories. And when you stop running those memories, whether good or bad, when you stop running those memories, they stop being a part of your everyday life, your brain literally craves that thing. Even though it was a bad thing, it will still crave it because that's what it's used to. It says, this is the way we've always done it. Now, they might wake up in the middle of the night like they're at war still. Because the brain doesn't know that they're sleeping in a safe home. There's nothing going on here. They have to sit with their back to the wall. They have to, you know, they're still doing all the things they would do at wartime, even though they're not at wartime, because the brain doesn't know how to flip that switch. So the first thing we need to do is teach them how to, we call it forgive, forget, and move on. Think of memories like this. Let's say we just had a really good meal here, and Terry bought enough that you get to take some home, right? So, and they give you Italian food, what, in white containers, right? And you take that white container home, you didn't write on it, like my wife's really good at, she'll write on it, we had this at this restaurant, this date, so we know when to throw it out because nobody eats the leftovers, right? So, but we put it in the refrigerator, and it gets pushed back to the back of the refrigerator. And, you know, it's been there for a few weeks, maybe even a month, and it smells pretty bad. It's like a bachelor pad. You know, you're opening up the refrigerator, something's stinking in there, but it's not that bad, and you're not going to be the one that cleans it. Somebody else will find it and throw it out. So you just keep shutting the refrigerator door. You buy Arm & Hammer to make sure that that smell goes away. But pretty soon, somebody's coming over. You're going to have a guest at the house, and you go, that refrigerator really stinks. I need to clean it. So you open up the refrigerator, you're putting everything away, and you get back to that little white box, and you open it up, and it's green and fuzzy. You didn't write on it. You don't know where it came from. What do you do with that? You throw it away, right? No, what you do is you send it off to CSI. You find out why mom and dad did it. You know, who to blame for putting that in the refrigerator, right? No, we don't do any of those things. In fact, the best study ever done, and I have a degree in psychology, the best study in psychology out there is 12%. Because the more you talk about past experiences, the worse they become. They call this revivication. So what we're going to do with Braintap is we're going to teach you how to store those memories differently. We're going to teach you to store them in the past. Every one of us, we have a time machine in our head. And if you don't believe me, just go to a family reunion. When you're sitting there at the dinner table, everybody's talking about something, and I know my version's right? And they're going to say, no, this is how it went. Like my sister will tell you that us boys, we got treated like royalty because we played sports. And I know that they got carried around on pillows throughout our whole childhood. You understand? So that's the way the brain works, you know? So we need to change those. One of my mentors, his name is Richard Bandler, he's the founder of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and he said that we all deserve multiple pasts, but they have to be alternative, positive pasts. So many times we relive negative memories, we bring them to life, we restore them, and what happens in the nervous system is we bring them up. So just to give you an example, does anybody here know how to turn a doorknob? Can anybody tell me which way it turns? Right, see everybody twitching? You're trying to do it with your nervous system, right? Because it's not stored up here anymore. You've done it so many times, and it's a trick question because doorknobs turn both right and left. They always turn toward the hinges. But you never think about that because your subconscious sees the door, sees the hinges, makes the right adjustment, and if somebody puts the wrong doorknob in, you know because you go, what's going on? Oh, I got to turn it the other way. Now, I found that out by going to the hardware store and saying, I need a doorknob. They said, is that for a right-hand or a left-hand door? And I went, what? I just need a doorknob. They go, no, it's really important. You need to know if you want a right-hand or a left-hand door. And I went home, I went, gosh, that is true. That's the way that it works. But that's how life works. We get these experiences, and we store them. They become automatic responses. How many of you have been married or in a really relationship, and your spouse, your significant other, started acting like their parents? And they said, I was never going to do that. Well, that's because we learn, there's something in our brains called mirror neurons. These mirror neurons actually look at our environment and say, who do I most want to be like? And believe it or not, whoever our primary caregiver was, whether it was mom or dad, you're going to start to take on their characteristics. Not because you wanted to, but because that's a survival program that we have in our brain. And these mirror neurons, that's why in sports, if you play any sports, they know that visualization is so important. And going to take lessons from people and learning from people, because we start to fire those mirror neurons in our brain. We start wiring and firing them. So think about a military person. What do they see? They hear the stories of what's going on. They're being trained for what's going on. They start anticipating what's going on. And yeah, bad things happen. They can't expect a good thing to happen. That's the nature of that game. It's bad, but that's the way it is. It's almost like being a police officer. And do we have any? You were a correction officer, right? But police officers, they say they're negative because all they do. How many times you've been pulled over by police and they go, well, I really want to congratulate you. That was an awesome turn you just made. You stopped perfectly. You turned and negotiated through traffic. I just want to stop and tell you, great. That thumbs up. That was wonderful, right? That doesn't happen. When you're driving down the road, let's say that you're driving with me. It's a perfect day here in Watertown, and it's summer. It's actually 70 degrees and no rain. There's sunshine and rainbows, and we're driving down the road. We're listening to your favorite song on the radio. We're doing the speed limit. You're doing the speed limit. I'm with you. And all of a sudden, you look in your rearview mirror and you see red and blue flashing lights. What happens? Your anxiety level goes up. But I told you, you're doing the speed limit. You're listening to your favorite song on the radio. All those good things could be happening, but as soon as some negative stimulus shows up, that graphic user interface shows up, that red and blue flashing light, oh man, that's terrible. Let's take another scenario. You're by yourself. You're on one of these roads getting to a town somewhere far away, like Adams or whatever. You're not in the city anymore, and your car breaks down, and you don't have a spare tire. Now you see coming over the hill red and blue flashing lights. What happens? All right, right? We all want to see cops or police officers or those kind of people only when we need them. Other than that, they can stay hidden. When we're doing 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, please stay off the road, Or if you decide to etch it up to see if you can do 10 miles an hour, they show up. So but it's the same stimulus. So it's our perception that creates it. The same thing with the military people. What happens is they change their perceptual filters. They change meanings that we wouldn't, like they hear a loud noise, they don't think, oh, somebody just dropped a dish in the back. They think, oh no, that was a landmine going on. And then it plays out the whole movie. It doesn't it's not a logical thing. They don't go, I'm going to think about this, it all happens in a split second, at the speed of thought, not at the speed of reason. But if you start to plan it differently, you start to slow down your day, you start to anticipate what's going on. We call this future pacing. Then you can start to have less stress. You can start to anticipate the best. Anybody here ever heard of a guy named Deepak Chopra? He's probably the father of a lot of the things that we do now as far as health. A lot of people were doing it before he started, but he made it famous. He says that 97% of what's going to happen to you tomorrow, you know about today. So what are you pretending not to know? I actually had a woman that was coming through our program, and she says, Dr. Porter, this isn't working for me. And I said, what do you mean it's not working for you? She said, I'm not losing any weight. And I said, well, what's happening? She goes, I'm still eating Oreo cookies. And I said, well, we don't have a program eat Oreo cookies and lose weight. So I'm wondering where that's at. And she said, well, I know that. I said, well, first of all, you should never eat anything made by elves, right? There's something called excitotoxins in them. These excitotoxins are chemically manufactured for addiction. You know who used to own the company that bought Kraft? They were the cigarette manufacturers. You know what the biggest addiction in a cigarette is? Sugar. They chemically manufactured cigarettes for addiction. They got caught, so they bought the food industry. So they put the same things in the foods. So if it comes in a can, bottle, or wrapper, has ingredients you can't read, you probably can't digest them, and it's manipulating you. So she said, well, I'm buying these for my grandkids. They're not for me. And I said, well, how many Oreo cookies do your grandkids get? Well, none. I said, so what are you pretending not to know? You're buying the Oreo cookies for yourself. It's a convenient excuse to say you're having for your grandkids. I said, I'll tell you what, this was in Virginia Beach, so I said, you know, we have a health food store. Go there and buy cookies that are fruit sweetened. They're not going to taste the same, but grandkids don't care. I had windmill cookies for my grandma. I loved them just the same. We didn't have all the fancy cookies, but I just liked to have cookies, you know, when I was at grandma's. So I said, take them out of the container because kids know the wrappers. Put them in a Tupperware container. And I said, then let's see what happens. And I had her listen to the sugar addiction series. She came back the next week. She goes, I can't believe it. I've lost 2 pounds, and I haven't eaten an Oreo cookie. I said, are you kidding me? You didn't go to the store while you're sleeping? Go buy the Oreo cookies and bring them home? So sometimes it's that simple. So some things we just need to teach people how to change their environment. You understand? So what can change in your environment? So what we're doing with the military is the first thing we need to do with their environment is teach them to sleep. So our pilot study was we took 30 vets that weren't sleeping. Within 3 weeks, they were all sleeping through the night because they had Braintap students. It takes them through a cycle of sleep and drops them off. Sleep is the most important thing for your recovery of your body. If you don't get deep sleep, something incredible happens. You don't detox the brain, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So when we talk about this, this is one of the studies when we look at the heart rate variability that some of you did. When you look at it, the 37% to 67%, this kind of shows our people, because what happens is even though something's working, and I jokingly said it to you, I said, we call this the St. Thomas effect. You know, if you don't know St. Thomas was, he's the one who said, I don't believe that Christ really rose from the dead until I put my fingers in the nail holes, right? Some people won't believe anything until they see scientific, empirical proof. Their life could be changing. So what this helps us to do in our programs is we can show people over time how they're improving. Because if it's up to you and how you feel, you might think, all I did was go to sleep. That's not true, but it is really good. If all you did was go to sleep, that's really good too. Because most people aren't sleeping through the night. They're not sleeping in the day. They're not taking naps. It used to be we would take naps. Now people think, oh, I can't do that. That's a waste of time. No, there's no better time spent than rebooting your brain and your nervous system. Because you're going to have more life. If you keep, it's like burning the, you probably heard the expression burning the candle at both ends. If your stimulant is, and I do drink coffee, so I'm not talking about you when you said that. I know you mentioned that. But if you, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that's Starbucks time, then you got a nervous system issue. You know, you should be able to boost your own nervous system, not using a stimulant. You know, the most abused, it's one of the most abused things. The most abused thing on earth is sugar. You know, they say if sugar was put on the market today, it would have to go through FDA clearance as a drug because it changes our behavior so much. But coffee's right there behind it. You know, people use coffee, you know, and I drink coffee. I just don't drink it all day. You know, I have it in the morning and that's it. And then I'll drink tea throughout the rest of the day, herbal tea. So when we think about it, when some of you that did the scan, I pointed out your gamma readings. When MIT came out with a study just earlier this year, they said that no one was using blue light for the brain. So luckily, my business partner that's in New York right now, he went to Harvard, and he knows the guy that runs the brain lab at MIT. I said, Nicholas, you got to call him because I've been using blue light ever since it was in, we used to use red light, then we used white light, now we use blue light because it's the safest. I said, we've been using it since then, and I can prove that we get more gamma than they get by not doing gamma stimulation. Gamma is 40 hertz frequency, so it'd be like sitting in this room with a strobe light going on with blue light. So they proved with rats that they could take care of amyloid plaque. That's what they think causes Alzheimer's. So what I showed him was when you go through this alpha theta brainwave pattern, some incredible things happen to your brain, and it increases gamma. We proved that it increased it by 23% on average with people. Some of you in this room actually doubled and tripled your gamma just in a 10-minute session. Now, once you start doing that, that that's a resonant frequency that blows out that, let's say, rust in the brain, if you will. That's what it's kind of like. But it only happens if you have gamma. What typically happens, unfortunately, to our brains as we get better looking and more intelligent with age, is we start shutting down these frequencies like gamma, beta, theta, alpha, and we operate in high degrees of delta. You've probably heard the expression, the masses are asleep. Have you ever heard that before? Well, with our scans, we'll prove that most of the masses are asleep. Most everybody we scan is over 50% delta. That means they're only using 50% of their brain to do 100% of the work, because delta does nothing in this reality. It's a timeless place that your brain's saying, hey, you have inflammation, you need to shut down. That inflammation could be in the brain, but it could be pain in other parts of the body. And so the body's saying, hey, you need to shut down so we can heal you. But we don't shut down in this reality, right? We're Americans, so we want it fast, we want it free, we want a limo to pick us up to go get our groceries, and we want it bagged for us, and then they can unbag it when we get home. That's the way it works. You know, we don't want to do all the work. We're looking for the easiest way possible. But the body, you either have to take care of the body or someday somebody's going to take care of you. So that's why it's so important to start doing something for your brain. And the brain has so much to do with it. But in this study, what we did is we took it up to them and we showed it to them. We did the scans with them. And the guy doing it goes, wow, he says, I'd be really interested in this if we just didn't raise $300 million for our program. They're building rooms with blue light that flash at 40 hertz frequency to do less than what ours does. And they're going to charge, you get to go into a doctor's office, put on special glasses, and sit in a blue room that flashes at 40 hertz frequency and get rid of amyloid plaque that doesn't even do what ours does. Now, the reason ours does it is when you go through this brainwave frequency, we're going to exercise the brain. Anybody here ever seen a tuning fork, like in a musical instrument? You hit the tuning fork, and then you put another tuning fork next to it, it starts to vibrate, then you put another tuning fork, it starts to vibrate. That's the way brainwaves work. When you get into the alpha brainwave, that's why it's so important when you start meditating, you get to alpha. When you have that alpha brainwave pattern just on the threshold of theta, the brain just comes alive, it lights up, and all these different brainwaves start to operate better. The reason we get so much of that is we're going to actually direct the brain to go through them. So without your awareness, if it takes your conscious mind, it takes about 30 years to master how the brain works. If you study like the Buddhist adepts and people that meditate, they don't just go take a couple classes or download an app and become a in-depth person. But we can show you that after a few sessions in the Braintap, we get people right there where they're at. And you don't have to know how you do it. The nice thing is you don't even have to know. You just do it because the brain knows how to do it. Part of that is that we're always resonating with our environment. Now these lights aren't the best because there's actually lights called full spectrum lights. And when you're under those full spectrum lights, you feel different. There's actually a guy named John Ott. If I was living up here, I would have a John Ott light sitting by my desk because it would give my body all the light it needs. Because we're missing that up in the north. You know, when you're in a sunshine state, you get more of that. But there's lights you can buy that have full spectrum light. When you're missing those light frequencies, the body gets out of balance. So part of it is we're feeding the body those things. Now, what are we talking about with biomodulation? This is a person, Mark, that I was talking about. He was 62 years old. He was operating at 57 years old. That's pretty good, and especially for a medical doctor. I have to tell you that usually when we scan medical doctors, they are like the worst shape on earth because they don't do anything nutritionally. They think they can all be cured with a pill or something like that, unfortunately. There's actually a talk that Dr. Wallach did. It says, dead doctors don't lie, because the average medical doctor doesn't live past 57. They have one of the smallest or shortest lifespans because, I don't know why, but they just don't take care of themselves nutritionally. Usually chiropractors are different. Chiropractors usually test out well, and nutritional people really test out well. But Mark, when he did a session, he was acting like a 57-year-old. Afterwards, he was functioning as a 34-year-old. That's because your nervous system will tell you what age you are. We've had people come in, and it's kind of like your laser where you see their lines on their face go away. The wrinkles go away because those are stress. Those are caused by stress. People will change physiologically. So there's a saying, you can change the psychology, it changes your physiology. Or some people exercise, then you notice their psychology changes because you can change the physiology, it affects the psychology. What we're saying is, why not do both? You know, with us, we have a saying, there's thoughts, traumas, and toxins are what's behind any problem in your life. So it's either your thoughts, you're thinking the wrong thoughts, and your thoughts are toxic, you know, or they're just not correct thinking. It could be toxins like the food you're eating or the air you're breathing or where you're living, what they call emission, the electronic emissions that people have could be causing it. It could be toxins. Now the reason we bring up toxins is that your brain only releases its toxins when you're in level 4 sleep. What that means is if you're not getting deep, restful sleep like those vets I was talking about, they're never going to detox their brain, which means now they're going to start to operate even higher in this stress zone because they have all these toxins built up in their brain. Level 4 sleep, by the way, you might have experienced it. It's when you wake up and you have sleep paralysis. Because what it does is it locks up your whole body, and then it dumps it. It's like flushing the toilet. It dumps those toxins from your brain. And most of us have experienced that at least once in our life. But at night, that should be happening 4 and 5 times. And it happens during a very important sleep cycle called delta. And they call them delta bursts. And you could sleep 4 hours, and if you get 4 or 5 delta bursts, you'll have all the energy you want through the day. If you sleep 9 hours and don't have any of those delta bursts, you'll wake up tired. Because energy, our body it's an energy mechanism. And if we don't get the energy in, we just don't feel good when we wake up. So that's why it's so important to get that deep sleep to detox and get the body going. Now, what is in the headset? Most of you have seen the headset here people are wearing. So what's in there? First of all, there's something we call strategic mind messaging. And those of you that have heard it, we have 2 different kind of sessions. And we actually have 3. Some that don't have any words, because some people don't want to hear words. They just want to relax, and they want to have the neurosensory algorithm, the brainwave training with just music. We have over 100 sessions like that. And some people think I'm trying to convince them to kill the president or something. So, which is, I mean, we don't use any negative suggestions or negative conditioning. We know that doesn't work. Just as we were talking at lunch, the biggest business in America right now is building prisons. And the reason for that is negative conditioning doesn't work. If it did, people wouldn't go back to prison. They're not committing crimes because they're going to get caught. They're too smart for that. And they get caught and they go to prison, they figure out, hey, I just made some mistake. Let's try it again, but do it this way. They think they're smarter than the system. And unfortunately, a lot of them never get caught, but the ones that do, you know, they think they can outsmart the system. So that's the same with our bodies. You know, when I went to Catholic school, I jokingly said I broke all the rules I could because they told me I couldn't. You know, that's the way that it worked, you know, and the nuns were very good at telling you what you couldn't do. Okay, I'll show you. You know, and that's just the way we work. So because the brain doesn't know how to process a negative. If I tell you to gather all the willpower you have right now, can you gather your willpower? Did you tell them to bring their willpower with them? Stop by the drugstore and get a bag of willpower? With all that willpower, I'm going to ask you not to think of a dancing pink elephant. Don't think of your favorite actor or actress. Don't think of the front door to your home. What happens when I ask you not to think of those things? You start to think about them. So the same neurons fire, the same brain part of your brain is firing, all that happens. So all day long, when somebody thinks about all the things they can't do, their brain is being conditioned to do it. And they don't realize it. Some people think they're positive by saying all the things they're not going to do. That's not positive at all. We need to focus on what we want to do and eliminate. We call that selective amnesia. You want to have selective amnesia. And for those with a sports analogy, you know, if you hit a bad shot, you don't want to set up to the next shot thinking about the bad shot you just hit. That's gone. You have a short memory. Now it's just a new position. This is a single shot. I'm going to address the ball. I'm going to get my mind straight. I'm going to hit that ball. Or in basketball, same thing. If you miss a shot, you're going to visualize it going right. You don't visualize bad shots. Although people that don't know how to think will start catastrophizing. How many times have you had something bad happen and you relive it over and over again going, I can't believe it happened. The brain goes, okay, I'll show it to you again. I can't believe that happened. What do you mean? I just showed it to you. I'll show it to you again. This did happen. So you got to be honest with yourself. These bad things do happen. It's about making adjustments and changes to those behaviors. And I found that out rather late in life because I actually spent 2 years with Sister Barbara. She liked me so much, she held me back. You know, so those kind of things happen because I was blaming everybody. You know, it wasn't me. It was the teacher's fault. It was this person's fault. Until my dad finally convinced me that it was my fault. It was my thinking that was faulty, not the experience. So think of life a little bit like a game. It doesn't matter what you think. It matters the results you're getting. So in life, we either have excuses or we have results. And I'd rather get results than have excuses. Okay, so Braintap gives you a chance to think about what results you want, and then unseen forces go to work through you to cause them to happen. Because behaviors follow thought. So that's the first thing that we do. The second thing we do is something called binaural beats. For those that have listened to apps, you might have heard something called binaural beats. Ours happened to be designed by a guy named Dr. Kaplan. He's the inventor of the computer that can listen to your brainwaves and have speech happen. He's from Moscow University, so we bought his algorithm. Used to use my algorithms, I thought they were pretty good, but he's got a lot more research and they're a lot more proven. So the speed in which we can take somebody from being in the wide awake state into this relaxed state and then back is very important. There's a certain algorithm to that, so where the training happens. But now, when we do that, if we wanted to get you to 10 hertz frequency, which I'll talk about in a minute, that's alpha, I'm going to have to send a 300 hertz frequency in one ear and a 310 hertz frequency in the other. The brain only hears the difference. It only hears 10 hertz frequency. It doesn't hear 300, it doesn't hear 310, it only hears 10 hertz frequency. Now, believe it or not, that's happening all the time. You're not hearing what's really happening. You're hearing the difference of what's happening. You never hear the exact same thing, but let's say you don't have the right hearing, you don't have the same hearing in the right or the left ear, those aren't going to work so well. So what we did was we added isochronic tones. Now what an isochronic tone is, this is a monotone. We could put one in the middle of this room, and if I had it set at 7 hertz frequency, you would think we're at a mountaintop, because that's what happens when we go to a mountaintop. The earth itself resonates at 7.8 hertz frequency. They call it the Schumann frequency. The planet has a resonant frequency of 7.8 hertz frequency. If we're by the ocean, which is a little crazier, it's going to operate at about 10 hertz frequency. That happens to be alpha. Both are relaxing, but one's a little more relaxing than the other. When we're in the city, not Waterton, because I saw your rush hour today, it wasn't that much. It's kind of like where I live, New Bern. If I have to wait through 2 lights, I'm really mad. You know, I'm like, what? 2 lights? But I did wait through 2 lights here, though. There was a little bit more. But it's like, if you go to New York City in the middle of a busy day, you're hearing the horns, all the commotion. That's 18 cycles per second. That's high beta. That's why some people can't go into those cities. But think about a military person who's in that zone for a month, 2 months, 3 years, 6 years, 4 times. Their whole body feels that. And then the body has to learn to adjust to that. Then it goes home to a quiet home and goes, oh, this is crazy. I don't understand what's going on here. It doesn't know how to act in that environment because it's not getting our bodies are frequency response generators. And just think about whenever you were in love, you have a certain response to that. You don't care if they leave the toothpaste cap off, their underwear in the middle of the room, it's cute, you pick it up. But after a while, that gets old, right? You lose that unless you refresh that kind of loving feeling. You know, that's why people will do date night and different things to try to keep that going, because if you just do the old stale thing, the brain starts to take those positive memories and pushes them too far into the past, and you start focusing on problems. Because that's what our brain's designed to do. They have something in the brain called the reticular activating system. What this is, it's a part of our reptilian brain, and it's designed to save us, to keep us safe. It scans our environment and says, is this a safe place for me? Is there anything odd and unusual do I need to be concerned with? If we didn't have it, we'd be doing crazy things. We wouldn't be able to navigate through a intersection. You know, but we can pull up to an intersection, we can make decisions because that part of our brain's working. Now it also works against us. In one example, if you've ever bought a new car and you drove it off the lot, then you started noticing all the cars like you just bought. I still remember my wife, this was a long time ago when caravans first came out. She came home with one, she said, I got this caravan, nobody has them, they're so great. And I said, let's go for a ride. So I said, there's one, there's one, there's one. She goes, I didn't even notice them, because she didn't notice them before because she wasn't driving a caravan. But as soon as it comes into your awareness, like for those of you that are chiropractors, if you're sitting in a restaurant and 3 rows over, you're in a conversation, somebody says chiropractic, you hear it. Because that's on top of your mind. If you're a nurse, you would hear something about that. You know, somebody was saying something. There's certain things that we listen for that are part of our reticular activating system. So what we're doing with the Braintap is we're rewiring that reticular activating system to be more compliant with your everyday life now. Because believe it or not, your brain was wired before you were 7 years old. And up to about 10 years ago, they didn't believe in something called neuroplasticity. They thought once your brain was formed, it was formed for life. They now know your brain is neuroplasticity, which means it can change. Your brain can change. Your brain can heal itself. And we actually have scans where we did something called SPECT scans, where we showed that 25% increased blood flow into damaged part of the brain within 6 weeks. Because we're bringing light, sound, and vibration to that area. The brain gets it. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. So when we use light therapy, when you're using the ears, somebody go, why do you got lights in the ears? Well, blood flows through your ears every 4 to 5 minutes. When we blood dope with light, it's called photobiomodulation. We put light into the body. That light circulates through the body, dispersing photons along the way to any part of the body that's missing it or that cellular system isn't working right. It gets a photon. And now the mitochondria in that cell turns on and the cellular system returns to a healthy function. Now, of course, the more you use it, the better it's going to be. But that's one way to get it in. Also, there's something in the ear called, the next phase is called auricular therapy. We have points in the ears. And this guy named Dr. Nogier, he found out that if you could hit certain points in the ears and generate a frequency, which means a certain frequency, there's one that we use, 297 hertz, but there's 7 different frequencies. If your body's out of phase with those frequencies, you're sick. If all those 7 frequencies are working right, you're healthy. So what we did is we took the one that has to do with the brain and the bones, and we broadcast that through the ears. And we did that for our autistic community. Because when we work with autism, autistic kids can't think like we can. They don't have alpha, which is the brainwave frequency I want to talk about. And because they don't have it, they don't know how to anticipate or learn as quickly as we do. So what we did is we said, we're going to bypass that. We're just going to tell the nervous system, hey, turn off sympathetic overload. That's when they're stimming, right? When you see them doing this. And turn on parasympathetic. Now, we don't want to go too far, because if they get into deep theta, they become disassociated. That's why there's a lot of books about autism called Disassociated Kids. Now they're not functioning in the world. They're separated because they're missing that one brainwave frequency. We did a study in Southern California with Joquita Handy, who's a doctor that uses it there with special needs children. And we showed that we could change their alpha brainwave activity. We improved it by 25%, and it stayed that way for 6 months. Now, we didn't test them after that because they kept wanting to use the Braintap. So it's something that once you use, and autistic kids love the Braintap because it has a certain pattern to it. Now, you might not see it even in the ears. It looks like they're just solid lights, but they're at a frequency of 297 hertz, which means they're going off and on so fast that our conscious mind can't see it, like a film. You know, a film's a bunch of little still frames, but it's moving so fast that our brain sees it as movement. The ears get it that way. Now, the reason we have lights in the eyes is the eyes are not just connected to the brain. Your eyes are your brain. So we're feeding light into the brain there. That goes into the brain, and there's something incredible that happens. It's called, again, photobiomodulation, but we're going to bring in blood flow, circulation, and with blood flow and circulation, you can bring nutrients. If you feed the brain nutrients and you don't have circulation, it doesn't matter. It's not going to get to the brain. So we need to open up those pathways. The nice thing about light and what it does, it builds new capillaries, new blood flow, new supply lines for the body. And it works on what they call, everything in the universe is built on this. It's called fractal mathematics. When the light hits the body, the first time you use it, it's going to build 1 capillary. The next time you use it, it's going to build 2. The next time you use it, it's going to build 5. The next time you use it, it's going to keep adding with what they call the Fibonacci sequence. It's going to build 8, then it's going to build 13. It's going to keep going to infinity. And pretty soon, the new blood flow circulation's there. When they did the SPECT scans, they go, how is that happening? How is there so much blood flow now? What's going on? And it doesn't go away. As you build this, unfortunately what happens as we grow older, our body's used to shutting down because unfortunately after about 27 years old, our usefulness, I guess, is over. So our body starts to go backwards, something called telomeres, that our body, they get shorter every year. And it tells us if somebody has longer telomeres, they know they're going to live longer. They've just kind of proven that. So everybody's got this. That has to do with cellular health. So the healthier your cells are, obviously the longer you're going to live, because I want to live long, but I want to be healthy. I don't want to be, somebody taking care of me. So we need to take care of our body. And that light is they say that light is the most underprescribed nutrient on the planet. People don't value it because they don't realize how valuable it is. So why do we need light? Because 99.999% of your body is space. The reality is that there's more space in the universe than there is solidness. So when you think about it, what's in there? Your body is vibrating to a certain frequency. There's a lot of information there. They don't know what it all is. What they do know is once the mitochondria shuts down or goes into a state of suspension because it doesn't have energy and resources, it just basically turns off. It says, I don't have enough energy to run. And then bad things start to happen. So light, in the form of frequency, wakes up the brain, wakes up the body, because we also use, like your light pads use for the body, the reason that works so well is the light gives a signal. It's almost just like glucagon in the body. It tells the body you're exercising. You're not. You're just laying there. But light hits the fat cells and it says, open up and release your fat. We need energy. Now it's circulating through the lymphatic system. You get on the whole body vibration and it uses it as energy. Where did that fat go? It's not coming back because it's now been used as energy. But that trap fat, like the brown fat that light gets to, it gets the brown fat. It's there because of a safety mechanism in the body. It's there to preserve you. For years, we had to worry about something called winter. Now we have 15 different grocery stores and we can pick out 50 different kinds of whatever. You know, we have so many choices, you know, it's incredible. When I have friends that come over here from other countries, they go, I can't believe you have grocery stores, right? We have, in our little town, we had 2 grocery stores open up just now. I'm going, why do we need that? Do we get more people here? And grocery stores only operate on like on a fraction of a percent. I mean, they're very costly, but it's like wars going on, turf wars going on for that. But there's 50 different choices. So we don't have to worry about running out of food. You know, but our bodies are still in that protective mode because our bodies are designed 100,000 years ago, not today. Today we need to eat a whole different way. So we talk about metabolism. We were featured in People magazine in 2006. If you want to go back and look at that issue. But they contacted us and they said, do you have anybody in your program that's taken off half their weight and kept it off for 5 years? Well, my dad at one time was 400 pounds. My mother was 320. So the first thing we did was learn how to do weight loss. And if anybody's going to gain weight, it's going to be the porters. You know, everybody in the universe, we're from Iowa, so they all expand faster than the earth. You know, so you go to a family picture, you got to use the wide-angle lens to get everybody in it. But what happened was we sent them 100 different case studies of people that had kept their weight off for 5 years. They picked Rob Powell from Chicago because People magazine's there. And he's still thin. Because once you change your mind, the biggest problem is most people with food, they go on a diet. Does anybody know the average length of time of a diet? They statistically prove the average diet lasts 72 hours. It starts on Monday, ends on Wednesday. They say the hell with it on Friday. And then on Saturday and Sunday, they go, well, I'm going to eat everything I'm never going to eat again. Because guess what's going to happen on Monday? We're going to start a new diet. Because the average woman spends 31 years of her life on a diet. This is based on New York. So I was being interviewed by Mary Claire magazine, and they had all these statistics. And actually, I was being interviewed because I was going to help a group of girls become more assertive. Because in New York City, there's more women than there are men. I said, man, I should have grown up there. That was totally different than my little town. I think there was 5 guys to every girl. Or at least it seemed that way to me. But when I read those statistics about weight, I go, that's really true. Some people will lose all their weight, but they still possess an overweight mind. So if you don't change your mind, if you have a thin mind, guess what's going to happen? Doesn't matter what you eat, what you do. You're going to change all those behaviors because you've changed the mindset. That's the first thing that needs to change, not the food, because that's too hard to change. So this is what happens after a session. Now this is what happened to Mark. He was bringing in 120 units of energy. After the session, he's at 363. In his body, you see the 52 and 68 there? He went from 149 to 214. That's energy brought in, 149. Burning 214. His body's now fat burning instead of fat storing. So we can show that, you know, what happens to the body. So the more you get your nervous system online, and by the way, I know we have a chiropractor in the room. When you get a chiropractic adjustment, it does the same thing. Get your nervous system online, really great things happen. So that's what's going on when that happens. So this is called ATP. Has anybody ever heard of it? ATP is called currency of the body. If you don't have ATP, you have no energy. That's why when somebody says, I drank a zero calorie Coke, well, you just dumped a lot of resources into your body. I mean, your body's going to have to give up a lot of resources to process that 0 calorie. Because it's going to take actually about 3 more, whatever size you drink. If it was 12 ounces, you got to drink 36 ounces of water to get back to where you were before. So your body's now in crisis mode. So not only are you stressed mentally, now your body's stressed out because you're drinking soda. And you don't really need it. The worst thing you can do is drink soda pop. In fact, the number one thing that our clients would do is get off soda. If they got off soda, they started losing weight because you're already at a deficit. We have people go, I don't drink coffee, I just get up and have a Pepsi. Well, that's 16 cups of sugar, teaspoons of sugar. Every 5 calories of sugar is a teaspoon. So when you think about that, you're basically dumping sugar into your body in the morning. Yeah, you're getting a quick start. It's probably the same as coffee, but your body's doing some really crazy things about that. So the stress. So this ATP is what happens. Light turns on ATP in the body. It basically becomes a way to ignite the energy system of the body. And because our brain controls all other energy systems, once we turn on the brain, all other energy systems come on too. Now, why do we need to do all that? Because when we make a change in behaviors, everybody take your hands like this, put them together. And when you put them together, make a commitment if your right thumb's on top, your left thumb's on top. How many people have your right thumb on top? How many people your left thumb? Okay, does anybody know what that means? No, I was hoping you did because I've been asking that for 30 years and nobody's told. No, what it means is if your right thumb's on top, you're probably left brain, and if your left thumb's on top, you're probably right brain. But what I want you to do is put your hands back together and put the other thumb on top. If your right thumb, now your left thumb's on top. What does that feel like? Doesn't feel very good, does it? Shake it off. Put your hands back together. How many people put the new thumb on top? Did anybody? No, that's because the nervous system wasn't trained. But I guarantee you, this week, if while you're sitting watching TV, you started putting the other thumb on top for a week, at the end of the week, that would feel just as comfortable as the other. That's how behavior change works. But think about it. If you're a right-brain person and you're in math class, your whole body's going to feel like that thumb's on the wrong way because you're in this environment but if you take that analytical English and science person and say, we're going to do drama, let's pretend we're trees, and they go, huh? I can't do that. I want to have a math problem. You understand? Because their nervous system doesn't know how to act. It's best to be flexible and be able to do both. So what Braintap does is helps to, because you're visualizing and you start realizing these changes, the nervous system starts to adapt and adjust around the new vision you have for yourself, the new ideas and the new concepts you start to enroll in believing. But it has to first start in here. If it's not in here, it can't happen. Like if somebody says, I can't believe it. The reality is that you need to believe it before you'll see it. It's not the other way around. Some people say, oh, I'll believe it when I see it. No, that's not the way the brain works. They actually say that when Columbus came here, the Indians couldn't see the ships because they had no concept of a ship being that big. They couldn't see them. In fact, they thought that there was no horses here. So they thought the men were attached to the horses because they couldn't in their brain make the difference because they couldn't see them. They also believe, and they know now scientific fact, that there's different colors on Earth right now that we can see. They were there before, but we couldn't perceive them before. So our brains are evolving to this new time. We don't know where it's going to go. We're in an evolutionary path. But it all happens if we get this ATP. If the ATP is turned on, you will not get cancer. Because every one of us has circulating cancer in our body. And our white marker cells say, hey, I can take care of that. But if we have a lot of fear and a lot of doubt, that suppresses the immune system. Fear suppresses all activities in the body. Because what do you have to do when you have fear, anger, resentment, jealousy, any negative emotion? Does anybody know what you have to do? You have to hold your breath. Just try to stay angry and breathe. You can't do it. If you're happy, try not to breathe. It's impossible. You have to breathe. All positive emotional states are linked to heavy breathing and deep rhythmic breathing. It's just natural. So the more we learn to breathe and be happy and pretend we're happy, then you're going to be happy because your beliefs dictate your behaviors. So as you change those belief systems, you change your behaviors. Now let's talk a little bit about brainwaves. When I was talking about beta, that's where we're at right now. We call this the reactionary mind. Now, the reason that we can make the changes we do in the military, and my great grandfather started the Marines, David Dixon Porter. So I did a lot of studying of the Marines just to figure it out. I was supposed to go in the Navy, but I dislocated my shoulder, so they said, go back to school and, do that. But I have a lot of family in the military. And when I was reading about it takes 10 weeks to make a Marine. Did you know that? And the reason it takes 10 weeks is you got to take somebody who has rational thinking, and you've got to change their belief to make them think they're Superman. They can do incredible things, and guess what? Most of the time they do. They believe that they're stronger than bullets. They believe they can do all these things, and they actually get up, and if they see somebody who's an officer who's a higher rank, they immediately salute because something happens immediately if they don't, right? We can't train people that way. We can't take you out of your life for 10 weeks, put you in boot camp, take away your watches, take away your ability to think for yourself, take away all those things and change your belief system. They can do that. Because you don't want somebody on the battlefield going, you know what, I'm sorry, man, I got a better way. How would that work? That wouldn't work too well in the military. Everybody's got to be thinking the way whoever the leader is tells them to think. If not, you're not going to win too many wars. But in the real world, what do? We start second guessing, thinking differently, changing. Somebody gives us a recommendation. Oh yeah, that's good, but I think I have a better way. So what we did over time, because I've been doing this quite a long time, my dad did it before me, was we would study people who did well. So we, instead of saying we're going to help you lose weight, you'll see in our app, it actually says, think like a naturally thin person. We don't want you to lose weight because naturally thin people don't care about losing weight. In fact, the worst thing somebody can tell me is, I'm a lifetime member of Weight Watchers. You ever heard anybody here belong to Weight Watchers like that? Right. That's probably the worst thing you can do. I'll say, congratulations, you just condemned yourself to a life of losing weight. Why would I want a lifetime membership to a society of people who want to lose weight? I want a lifetime membership to the Naturally Thin Club. So I don't have to think about weight again. But in order to be a member of Weight Watchers, you have to gain the weight, lose the weight, gain the weight, lose the weight, gain the weight, lose the weight. You got to eat their points. You got to change their beliefs. You got to change their marketing because after all, they sold it to Nabisco. So you have all this crazy marketing. You can eat Twinkies if you want, as long as you follow the points. It's crazy. It's better to be just healthy and eat healthy, think healthy, act healthy. Following all these crazy diets, that's not what's going to help you to lose weight. What's going to help you to lose weight is realize what your body needs. Our body needs about 70-80% water-based foods. You need to drink half your body's weight in ounces of water. And you need to get 10,000 steps, and you need some physical resistance exercise. It is that simple, but what happens is life happens. Then it doesn't become simple anymore. I don't have time to do that. It's easier to stop by the fast food place and get something. You understand? Or do something else. So we either plan for our success or we count on our failures because it's going to happen. There's a saying we have in the Braintap world is you get what you rehearse in life, not what you intend. Because intention doesn't work alone. You got to have action to back it up. In the spiritual world, they call that faith without works is dead. You can't just have faith, you got to do the work. So that's part of what we're talking about here. So alpha is important because that's your intuitive mind. Remember, 87 to 97% of what's going to happen tomorrow you know about today. There's going to be a small thing or something that's going to change, but pretty much you know. And if you buy Oreo cookies for your grandkids, you're probably going to eat them. So you got to shop as if you're going to build if I was to meet you in the grocery store, I'd want to look in your grocery cart and say, wow, that's a healthy body you're building. But if I look in your grocery cart and go, oh my God, that's either a lot of exercise, a lot of purging, or whatever you're going to do, because unless you're Saint Germain and you have alchemistic powers, you're not going to change that food into healthy foods. You can't exercise your way out of the kitchen. You've got to eat right in the kitchen, and then you can build your body. So it starts first with what you buy and how you think. Now with theta, we call this the inventive mind. The reason this is so important is most of us only go into theta a couple of times during the day. And it happens when we go to bed at night. It happens when we wake up in the morning. And some of you might even remember, if you've ever woke up to the sound of a song, maybe you didn't even like that song, but it's stuck in your head all day, and you couldn't get it out. That's because when you hear something in theta, they call it hypermnesia. That's super memory. So it sticks in your head. So imagine getting a positive message like that every day using the app, which, by the way, if you don't have the app, you're going to sign up, right? Terry's going to sign you up. You're going to get to use it for 30 days. So everything I'm saying you get to use for free. Try it for yourself. And what will happen is you'll start to change your thoughts because they're positive messages. And it's not telling you what to think. We're teaching you how to think. I don't have enough time to go through the sequence, but I have written 9 books. And I'm going to give you a link. She's also going to give you a link so I can send you some of those books. I didn't bring any to sell. I'm going to give them to you for free. All you got to do is sign up with her, and we'll send you a link, and you can download them as PDFs. But one of the books that I'm not going to give you because it's not relevant here, it's more for therapists. It's called Discover the Language of the Mind, and it's my 13 core techniques, and I teach therapists how to use them. It's a sequence of how to change somebody so they make positive changes happen in their life. Because my job isn't to make money off you. My job is to make you the best you that you can be. And a long time ago, I realized I can only help so many people. Even when I had my franchise company, we had 108 locations around America. We were helping a lot of people, but it wasn't as many as we're helping now at Braintap. Because you can do it right at your own home. You can just plug in, use your app on your phone, start listening, and start making changes. You can make changes for yourself. We want to empower you to make changes, so you're not dependent upon something else or someone else to do that. Now, delta is sleep. Anybody here ever heard of sleep learning? Like in the military, they say, wow, in the military they use sleep learning. And they do. But there's only 3 times at night where you learn during sleep. And you happen to be in alpha and theta. And so when you're sleeping, you're going through these cycles of sleep. And when you're in between alpha and theta, you have hypermnesia. So if they're playing something on a speaker, you hear it. That's why when they came up with like cassettes that you could play on autoplay, or now they have digital stuff you can play on autoplay, you can learn languages and all that while you sleep. But you only learn during alpha and theta. You don't learn during deep sleep. You're not there. You know, if you've ever fallen asleep on the couch and somebody tries to wake you up, or some member of the family's there and they go, oh, they're dead to the world. That's because they're in deep delta. They're not waking up. You know, they're in a deep state of rejuvenation. And there's no learning going on. So this is what happens when I said this person's at 41% delta. That would be a good reading, actually, for people in our clinic. But that's pretty good. He's at 7% gamma there. After the session, here he is. He's got 42% beta, 26% alpha. That's almost a perfect brainwave after the session. Now, Mark, Dr. Mark here, he had been doing the Braintap for about a year, so I knew he was going to bounce right back. We're all going to have stressful days. In fact, we had a doctor that I told some of you last night. We had a doctor at an event just this past weekend, and he wanted to test out how gluten affected his body. He hadn't eaten gluten in a couple of years. So I guess he was thinking, I must be over this gluten thing. So we did the scan. He ate his gluten biscuit. We did it. His nervous system crashed. It took him 3 days to bring it back to normal because his body could not handle gluten. He knew it because he always felt bad, but we could show him how that happens. So, you know, your nervous system is not going to, it's like a lie detector. It's going to tell you what you need or don't need. You know, so if it's out of balance, that's why we work with so many chiropractors too, is because they're working with the hardware of the body and we work with the software, the mind. So we have most of our chiropractors will do an adjustment and have people listen to the Braintap. Because now whatever they just did, we can get the brain wiring and firing around that change. So it can remodel around it. When I said earlier that we've all had brain trauma, we just remodeled around it. There was actually a guy this past year that jumped into a pool and fractured his brain, or his skull, traumatic brain injury. When he came out of it, he could play the piano perfectly. No lessons. He didn't even want to play the piano. So there's some weird things the brain does. And he's like one of these people, they don't know why that is. Why can he play the piano now? I mean, he just had a traumatic brain injury. I don't recommend jumping into a pool and getting a traumatic brain injury to learn how to play the piano, but I'm thinking, that's pretty wild. But there's been things like that happen all through history. Something happens to the brain. Our brain knows so much. Like, we learn by absorption when we're younger, and then we learn by elimination as we get older. You know, basically our brain is totally wired when we're younger, and we unplug it as we grow older. It's not, we don't wire it up when we get older. We unplug it. Those neurons start unplugging. So that's why if you've ever known, some people will start doing the same thing every day. They'll come home, they watch the same shows, they drink the same beer. They do whatever every day. They become robotic because that's what the brain likes. The brain likes patterns. So we want to disrupt that pattern and keep our neuroplasticity going. Now, when we're talking about brain chemistry and how it changes, when we get beta, that beta I was talking about, when you're in beta, you produce dopamine. This is a neurotransmitter that we need, right? So when we're in high, we can overproduce adrenaline. Now, but if you have a brain trauma with the frontal lobe, you're not going to produce beta brain waves, and you're not going to produce dopamine. So part of that is we've got to get the brain woke up. We need to heal that part of the brain in order to get it doing it. These neurons, though, aren't made in the brain like you might think. These neurons are actually made in the gut. These neurons instruct the gut to make your neurotransmitters. So we have another brain. It's the gut brain. They actually have proven that you have brain matter in your gut. So when you have a hunch and you're thinking with your gut, there's actually a brain there. There's also a third brain called the nervous system. That's why you were trying to turn the doorknob with your hand. When these three brains are all in harmony, you have ultimate health. If any one of them is out of harmony, you're not going to have very good health. When we're working with the autistic kids, by the way, we put a light pad on their gut because they have a lot of gut issues, but it's affecting their brain. But as soon as we put the light there, again, the blood flows, nitric oxide happens. That nitric oxide is like a natural healer to the body. It's a miracle. The people that discovered that we have nitric oxide won the Nobel Peace Prize. So as we do these things, what happens is the body begins to respond to these health consequences that happen when we're doing the right things. So we want to bring all these into alignment. So when the chiropractor is adjusting the nervous system, that brain, now we're going to get them eating proper nutrition that's going to adjust that brain. If you're doing the brain tap, you're going to adjust that brain. So now you're getting them all to work together. And we have a lot of other doctors too. They're not just chiropractors. Now when you're doing alpha brainwaves, you're creating acetylcholine. So that means if you have a damage up here, you're not going to produce that neurotransmitter. If you don't produce any of these transmitters, you're going to also find that behaviors are going to change. Personalities are going to change. That's why when somebody has a traumatic brain injury, they start to act differently. Or when they're under tremendous stress, like in the military, they begin to act out differently. And like when we work with some professional athletes that have had a lot of traumatic brain injury, they start to change. Their personality changes. But it didn't change. It's just they're not so aggressive because now they're getting the right balance of these neurotransmitters. If they have an overabundance of like dopamine, the beta transmitter, then they're going to get angry and upset a lot. They're going to be reactionary. So we want to get them more into this acetylcholine. When they get into theta, they produce GABA. Now, a lot of people take GABA because they think by taking it synthetically or taking it as a supplement, they're going to somehow be relaxed and calm. But your theta brainwave produces it for you. Again, when you get your brain producing it, you don't have any negative side effects to your brain's chemistry. If you take it as a supplement, but you're not getting theta brainwaves, guess where it goes? Right out. Because your brain it's not in the right state of mind to assimilate it. The brain has to be producing these things in order for it to produce it. Now, delta brainwaves produce serotonin. How many people have heard of SSRIs, right? When somebody takes those, the downside to those drugs, obviously, is all the side effects, but it's also they have the brain storing serotonin, so it doesn't release it. That's not the way our body works. Our body works to bring in chemicals, flush them, cycle it. They're not meant to, it's like keeping serotonin in the refrigerator and using it next week. It's no good anymore. So that's why, I mean, there's not an SSR study that's better than 12%. In fact, there's not one that's better than 2%. But they still keep producing them. They've never had a study that produced the results they wanted. So the placebo is 40%, just so you know. 33 to 40% of anything works. They could give them a sugar pill and get the same as the SSRI. So, you know, they should be doing that first and seeing if it works, because 40% of the time it's going to work. But the problem is people start relying on it. You know, there was just a study, what's the drug that the school kids are taking now to stay focused? Adderall? Adderall has the same chemical component as meth. When you look at the chemical breakdown, it's just legal.
That's why they sell it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's crazy what they do to people. So, but our brain can produce these. Remember, the greatest pharmacy on earth is in here. It's not out there. But we got to be in the right brainwave states to get it there. So the brain tap is actually training the brain to get into those states. So what is the brain tap again? It's high tech. We call it high tech meditation. It's going to take you to places you can't go on your own unless you want to go to someplace and learn how to meditate for 30 years. I mean, when the Manager Clinic in Atlanta would take like Swami Rama and do these tests with it, we could take people to theta with one session without any training. When a Buddhist adept would take 20, 30 years to do it. Because technology is here now to save it. You know, anytime there's a technology crisis, there's always a technology solution. You know, the universe will figure that one out. We have 800 programs. So chances are we have something for you. If we have any problem, it's that we have too many sessions. People look at it and go, wow, this is way too much. Where do I start? Well, you start at number 1 and you move through the series. Because believe it or not, each one of those is building on the next. It's building behavior patterns. It's building ways of thinking. The first sessions are helping you to disassociate from that problem. The second one is helping you to associate with solutions. The third is helping you to create timelines. There's a process with each one of those, even though it sounds like I'm just doing word soup. There's actually a technique embedded in there. They call it metaphoric training. So I'm telling stories, or I'm doing other things, but I'm actually training the brain along with it to do different things. And once the brain learns it, it will apply it in your real life. It'll feed it back through behavior changes. Now, our product is available on Android or Apple, or if you have a Kindle. You know, somebody just sent me Kindle on Amazon right now. They have Kindle tablets that are now $29. And you can put an app on it. It plays the sessions. So, I mean, it's very affordable. You can use our program for as little as $30 a month. We're coming out at the end of this month with a $5 app, a $10 app. We'll be specific. So if somebody just wants to work on their golf game, or they just want to work on better sleeping, or they can buy just those sessions instead of having to buy the whole library if they want. So we're doing some things like that. each program is designed to take you in and out. Now, we also have a program, if you go into some of our programs, they say SMR, sensory motor rhythm. That's a brainwave frequency I didn't spell out here, but that's the one between alpha and beta, and that's the one we need for cognitive repair. So when we're working with somebody for, if they have dementia or they have onset Alzheimer's, we're going to get them using that brainwave frequency because we need to wake up the brain. We need to get that brainwave going. That's the brainwave that helps with recall of information. If that brainwave goes away, or the nervous system has down-regulated, which means it stays too much in parasympathetic, what happens is the brain starts to shut those areas down. We want to keep that. We want to be able to shut down when it's sleep time, but we want to be able to wake up when it's up time. You know, so part of that is that training. So we have a whole training for that. We have other trainings that are doctor only for some of our neurological doctors that can check out the brain, but most of ours are just a natural training that trains the brain to have more alpha beta. So most of our programs are anywhere, we have 10-minute programs, we call those digital coffee. They're meant to wake up the SMR brainwave, wake you up in the morning so you don't need a stimulant. And usually they'll improve the alpha beta ratio by anywhere between 20 to 30% in the morning. So you'll feel like you've exercised or whatever, and you have all this energy to do what you need to do. And some people will use those during the day too, because they don't have 20 minutes. So you can do the shorter sessions at that time. Now, these are the books. Before I take any questions, when you sign up, you're going to get these 3 books. So we'll send you links to them. You download them as PDFs. You can read them on your Kindle, or you can read them on your tablets or your computer. You know, they'll come as PDFs, so you'll be able to read them any way you want. If you want the physical books, you can buy them on Amazon. And if you want to listen to them, if you listen to audible.com, they're on there. So you can actually play them. I don't have the rights to those, so you have to buy them through those people. But I can give you these. So if all you have to do is get with Terry, and she'll send you the link to download those. So before we wrap it up tonight, any questions about what I covered? Or are you all now ready to go home? You had your Italian meal. You're ready to go home and crash. Any questions for me? Yeah. Yes. What's happening with the lights, let me clarify a little bit more. When the eyes, it's actually your eyes are closed, but it's working with the optic nerve. So what's happening in the right ear is happening in the left eye, and then what's happening in the right eye is happening in the left ear. So we're going back and forth. We're training the brain to have more communication between the hemispheres. And part of that is, remember we did that little exercise? What I didn't mention was when you do that, one side of your brain shuts down. So let's say little Jimmy is somebody who is right brain dominant, and they tested at home, sat at the kitchen table, they did great with mom and dad, they're ready for the test. They go into the testing room, and the teacher says, okay, you've got 60 minutes to finish this test. Stress hits. Guess what? His left brain shuts down. That's where all the information is. And he's got this right brain, he's all nervous and stressed out, he doesn't know where the information is. He had it all last night, but now, because he didn't learn in a stressed environment, that's why to create a Marine, what do they have to do? They have to stress them out so that when they get in a stressed out environment in the field, they know how to act. They can't be like, oh, come on, guys, let's do it. You know, you're like, they're screaming at them, getting them all stressed out, so that when they're under pressure, those memories are there. They're called state-dependent memories. So the same is true with anything. So we don't want the brain to shut down. So that's why we have the light splashing in the eyes. It keeps the frontal lobe active. It's going to exercise that part of the brain, which usually shuts down. As soon as you close your eyes, your frontal lobe is going to shut down because it's meant to conserve energy. But that's counterintuitive to what we need in this day and age. We need to be able to process our day. We have so much information coming at us. They say if our great-grandparents were set down in Times Square, they'd probably die of neural shock. There's so much information there. There's so much going on. So any other questions before we wrap it up?
So, do you feel that it does help heal people who have onset to Alzheimer's?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Now, we've never had it like somebody who has full-blown Alzheimer's do it, but we've had some really great, I mean, we've even had people who were in comas using the Braintap and be able to talk to their family with yes or no responses with their fingers that had no response. So, I mean, we've had some pretty crazy things happen, incredible. The brain, they do know, can heal itself. Like I said, what happens is when there's damage to the brain or they have that amyloid plaque, what happens is the neurons can't fire and wire together anymore. So once you start clearing that away, you start getting blood flow and circulation again. The brain is like the liver. They used to say the liver was the only organ that can regrow itself. The brain can too. And they prove that now through SPECT scans in how the brain can rebuild itself. Now, you have to get circulation and blood flow there and nutrients, or it's not going to. So they have to get them sleeping, things like that. Yeah, we've had really, one of the biggest things, like for ADHD and ADD and working with cognitive repair, we've had great results with that. And even with just the sound, just using the app, we've had a lot of great results with it. But using the light is really important too at that point. Any other questions?
We have two voices on there.
Okay.
Same thing with the light?
Right. So what's happening with the two voices? For those of you who haven't heard them, you're going, what? Two voices? What it is your conscious mind, when we say something in the right ear, the left brain lights up. We say something in the left ear, the right brain lights up. And pretty soon, at about 6 minutes in, the brain never shuts down anymore. So what happens is we're training the brain under stress to stay awake instead of closing in and shutting down. That's the key. The brain, it's like any exercise program. If you don't exercise the body, what's going to happen? It's going to atrophy, and you're not going to have the same thing with the brain. Most people love the dual voice. Some people, like a small percentage, about 3%, don't like it. And usually it's the real young and the real older people don't like it because they think it's too confusing. But it's not for your conscious mind anyway. If you've never read a book, there's a great book called Biology of Belief. I didn't write it. It's a really good book. A guy named Bruce Lipton wrote it. And when you think about the biology of belief and what's going on, he says that most people are trying to change the 2% that controls their life. That's your conscious mind. Your conscious mind literally has no control. It's like Freddy Krueger on the bus. Freddy Krueger's driving and you're in the back handcuffed. Your subconscious or your body intelligence is what's running your life. It's unconscious. So you've got to train that part of the body. If you don't retrain that part of the body, you can't do it consciously. There's too much going on. 25% of the time you go unconscious. Just remember when you're driving across town, you go, man, I know I drove across town. I don't remember all those. That's because you've done it so many times, your brain said, we don't have to remember that. Let's just go. You can think of other things and do it. So we want to stay conscious. We want to stay aware. We want to stay awake. And we can make those changes. So you don't have to go, I could have had a V8. You want to have the V8 before you do that, Yes?
Is there any particular application that you use on kids with tics?
We do have a Lyme program.
A what?
A Lyme program.
Oh.
We have a Lyme relief program. But really, for the kids, we have 40 sessions for kids, and they're all 10 minutes because they usually don't need such a ramp down to de-stress. So any of those will help. It's about getting the body balanced. So just like for those that don't know, there's a saying in chiropractic, they say innate. That's the innate intelligence of the body. Your body knows what to do. When we were little, we'd get a cut on our hand. We didn't agonize over, was it going to coagulate and get a scab and grow back. We just knew mom would kiss it and put a Band-Aid on it, we'd be better. Then we'd peel the Band-Aid, hey, it's all better. That's the way the body works. It's magical. But if we stress out, and of course, that's a toxic problem. So we need to get the body in the best possible way to get it back online. We need to get the nervous system back online because it's being attacked, by foreign bodies. And that's a new kind of thing that's happening out there right now. And so now we're not the full protocol. Like a lot of things we do with Braintap, you can't just listen to Braintap to get rid of Lyme. These doctors have other protocols they use with it, nutritional protocols and other things that they do. So, but we're a part of that solution. And part of it is just because when you get one thing we don't show here, but it's shown in another test is your immune system, your self-esteem, your self-confidence linked to that. As you do these sessions, you build that self-confidence, that self-esteem, that self-worth, and that's directly related to how your immune system operates. Those people that feel like they're victims, that the world's after them, I used to think that God's sole mission was to make my life miserable when I was a kid, and then I realized God didn't care. So, it was up to me. I was making my own life miserable. I was doing enough damage myself. He didn't have to help out. So so we want to get out of our own way as much as possible. Any other questions? Yes.
I loved it last night when you were talking about children absorb.
Yes.
And then I tried to go home and tell my husband. I was like, well, he has a newer job and he has all these things to learn. And he's like, I'm learning because I'm just doing it over and over again. He's like, well, what's, I've learned, you can still learn this way.
Oh, yeah.
As adults,
Well, that's the only way you can learn it. You're running the same neurological pattern over and over again until the brain says, okay, I get it. This is what we want to do. But how many people have heard it takes 21 days to make a change? You've probably heard that. Okay, that's a lie. It was never said that way. When Stanford University ran the program and Harvard confirmed it, they said it takes 21 days if you use relaxation and visualization techniques. That's Braintap. If you don't, it takes 18 months. That's how long it takes to learn. Like when I help people with the MCAT or other tests like that, when they use the Braintap, we have a whole learning series. What you do is you do your learning and then you do the Braintap, you're going to learn much faster. Whatever you're just trying to remember, because you just stressed out your brain. Once you, what the whole job of that alpha theta brainwave pattern before you hit delta is to sort, organize, and train the brain to recall what happened today. Because if something bad happened today, we want to remember it and we want to be ready for it in the future. Now that works against the soldier, right? Because it works okay when you're out there having to, you know, be on ready alert. But when you get home, there's not somebody around every corner with a sharpshooter. There's not people trying to attack you. There's not landmines out in the yard. But their brain is still trained to do that. So that's why we have to clean up those memories. We have to change those memories so that we can end that program and start a new program. That's also what happens when we're grieving over a loved one. Our brain thinks nobody's ever going to die, right? It's just going to, that's not going to happen. But then it happens to all of us. You know, when my mother died at 49, nobody could believe it. You know, my dad lived to 76, and we would have all bet all of our life savings my dad was going to go first. He was the one who wrote all the back roads. You know, my mom was really healthy, but, you know, we don't get to pick the time that we get to punch the ticket to go home. You know, it's punched for us. So, you know, but nobody's prepared for that. Some cultures, it's a, you know, they learn about that. In America, we kind of, that doesn't happen. You know, then our brain's not ready for it. When it happens, all those neural pathways have to be redefined. They have to be changed because we're not waking up and having that same conversation. We're not doing those same events. We're not planning vacations. We're not doing, you understand? All those things, but the brain doesn't know how to process that. So, but as you learn some of these exercises, it's not like you forget the person. You're never going to forget the person. But, you know, some of the trainings I've done, one, I remember the woman, she, unfortunately, she was a Jewish woman, and she saw her son get blown up on a bus in Tel Aviv, you know, and so that was the memory she had, the last memory she had of her son. And of course, she kept playing that over and over again before she saw me for 5 years. And she was making it worse and worse every time. She didn't realize that. So we have to store that off the timeline. It happened, it's terrible, but it's not something you want to live every day, you know, but she was reliving it every day. She'd wake up, and that's also kind of like what PTSD is. You know, they're reliving those experiences just like they're here right now, because the brain doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So like when you were 5 years old and something negative happens to you, as that 5-year-old's still in there, it's happening to them. Until you fix it, you make peace with it, and you know, that's why all this inner work is being done. I mean, bad things happen. It's a terrible thing, but I didn't know such bad things happened until I became a counselor. I'm like, oh my God, I thought my childhood was bad, and now I think, wow, mine was great. Every once in a while, it gets spanked, you know, no big deal. You know, but, you know, there was no, and I had great priests at our parish, so I didn't have some of the trauma that some of the people were talking about. So, you know, there was different experiences like that. Yes?
Curious working hard in our community to try to reach our military population. I'm wondering, are you working with any other military communities or installations?
All over the country. The Wounded Warrior Project, we're doing it. In fact, I was hoping that I could show you a website we have. We have an app that allows they're going to have anybody who's in the military can use it, and it's a Wounded Warrior app that we created. So we're going to be working with that and deploying it through our 1,600 offices to the military. And especially once Kansas State is done with their research project, it's going to go viral because we've already got so much buzz going on out there from the military. And where we're at, it's big military, but you know, we're in every big city you can think of. So, just to give you an idea, in India, when I go there, in India, when I was just there, there's 3 government offices that have brain tapping centers now in them for government employees. Because they all have they have one of these scanners and they have 4 stations set up. And the workers can come down anytime they want, do a brain tap session to de-stress. Because the governor, the minister of health came to an event and we did a pre and post scan with him. We couldn't believe it. He sent his buyer in the next day. And it's like, we need these in every government building. I said, yeah, we do. You know, of course, I'm the manufacturer, so I love that. So, you know, but it does help. Yes.
How do you know, like, how often you do it, when to do it?
Well, we know that there's a 72-hour, the least amount to do it is every 3 days. You can, if you do it more than 3 times in a day, there's no neurological benefit. So some people will do it 3 times a day if they're really starting out. There's AM programs for the morning, you do the midday program, you do the sleep program. Most people can do it just once a day and get really great benefits from it. But as long as you do it 3 times a week, you're going to get a good benefit from it. Because the nervous system will never go back to where it was. It will keep improving, keep improving.
So you're setting a new default.
Yeah, you're setting a new default. That's a good way to say it. Yeah.
So,
And,
like, I mean, you talk about studying for a test and then doing it. Should you do it like after you're stressed? Or?
yes. Or if you can do it before, you're gonna inoculate yourself. Think of your nervous system or your body like a capacitor. An electronic circuit, what a capacitor does, it holds a charge and discharges at a certain point. We're all kind of like that, right? Some of us have different discharge points. And we're not going to discharge on the police officer if he pulls us over. But God forbid who's ever at home and causes us trouble the first time, we're going to discharge on them, right? So we want to learn to discharge before it builds up to that point. So we have more of a buffer. You know, because most people are just kind of boiling right at the edge and one little thing happens and it triggers them. So with studying in the schools, there's 3 schools in LA County that use the Braintap for special needs, and they call it brain prep. In the morning, there's 2 things they do every morning. They do Tai Chi, they run, and they do Braintap. So they do exercise, and they do Braintap every day. They call it brain prep because these kids are all over the place, and it calms their mind, it gets them focused to learn. But we find that with the normal population, it's usually best if they study. Now, if they come home and they're so stressed out they can't get their thoughts around, then yeah, have them do a brain tap before they study so they can focus. It will focus them in, they'll have the energy to learn and read. One of the books, I have a book called Awaken the Genius. If you have children, that's a really good book. And you get to listen to it for free on the app. So it's in the audiobook section. So it's audio book that I can give away. You can buy the physical version on Amazon or Kindle or whatever. But I have a lot of techniques in there for kids as far as how to learn and what to learn. We've done so many studies. We took a school system in Kentucky. We took C students that weren't going to go to college. These were seniors in high school. We spent 4 weeks with them. And after those 4 weeks, 58 out of the 60 enrolled in their freshman year and completed their freshman year. That's unheard of. Usually it's 50% dropout. So now at Prestonsburg Junior College, they order the Awaken the Genius every quarter. And they keep it in there for every incoming freshman gets one. Because if they can learn those techniques, learning's easy.
So you said they have 800 apps. Yeah, I would look at that and that would shut me down right there.
Right, so what you do is you look at what's going on for you and you look, there's different categories like lifestyle, health, different things like that, or sports. So you'd look at the ones that you'd want. Well, we have one called Better Life Me, which is kind of like dealing with there's 9 core characteristics for a balanced life. And think of it like a wheel. And if all of those are balanced, you're rolling down the road good. But if one of them's out of balance, so this series is all about building balance in your life, like family, finances, spirituality, all the things you would need in that wheel of life. That's a good one we have people start on. And then a lot of people start just with the stress reduction series because it also deals with, once you get through the preliminary learning, we're going to teach you how to put past events into perspective. We're going to help you to plan future events and build anticipation for something good. And there's just all these different things that it's all a training.
Is there someone that says, this is what I would recommend that you start with?
Well, if you go to someone like Terry, she would tell you. That's what the doctors do. Or Dr. Porter there, who's got the great last name. He's got to be related some way. He's here at the meetings. There's so many Porters, so.
I have a question. Why is some clients use Braintap, listen to it, come out, and other clients, as soon as you apply it, they go right to sleep, and over and over again, they fall right to sleep?
It's okay if they fall asleep.
Yes.
They're still getting the training, but the main reason is if there's a big gap, if they don't have a lot of theta, what'll happen is when they get down to alpha, they'll just drop into delta. So we got to train them to get more theta so they stay aware during that time. You can put your tongue right behind the front 2 teeth, and that triggers your adrenaline adrenal glands, and you'll stay awake. It's a technique they use in yoga. So when you do that, it'll actually help make you stay focused. Now, some people in our clinic, if we found that they were getting results in sleeping, that's fine. But if they're not getting results in sleeping, we have them sit up. Because it's not really about sleeping. If they're sleeping so deep they don't remember anything, if they're dropping into delta in that short period of time, that's not the same as getting the training. But usually we have devices at our office where we can hook you up with the Braintap and watch your brain go through the series. And most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time, even when people think they're sleeping, their brain's still going through that training. So you don't have to worry about it. I mean, eventually you won't hear, hello, this is Dr. Patrick Porter, and eyes open, wide awake, and go, hey, what just happened? We call that island time experience. Yeah, yeah, and that's fine. I mean, as long as you wake up at the end, then you weren't sleeping, because it takes 40 minutes to go to sleep. So you were in the deep state of theta, which there's some devices like the Muse, which is a neurofeedback device. They believe when you're in theta, you're sleeping. That's not really true. You can be in theta and be aware. It's like somebody sleeping on the couch. Go, oh, they're sleeping. They go, I can hear you. You know, they're snoring and everything, but they're not really asleep. They're just in a deep relaxation state. When you're in delta, you don't hear anything, you know, so you're out.
So is it recommended to lay down with it, keep lights off with it? I mean,
Yeah, most people will use a recliner if they have it at home, or lay on their bed or on their floor. You want to elevate your knees if you're laying on the floor or something, because it might hurt your back. You know, I usually would put like today when I did at the hotel, before I got out, I put a pillow underneath my legs and just did on the bed, you know, just do a session that way. Just make yourself as comfortable as possible. Some people actually sit up in chairs. We have some doctors that use these chairs called Bonang chairs from IKEA. You're kind of sitting up, but you're relaxed back a little bit, and they just put them on and people relax that way. It's best if you're like in a recliner. We use like these zero gravity chairs. These are only like $40 on Amazon. I mean, we leave them all over the country when we do events. And we have a booth that actually is a 30 by 35 foot booth. We have 18 chairs set up. And I mean, we do some events that are very big, like for different organizations. So, and we just leave them there. Or we give them to people, the first people that buy we say, you get a chair with that one, take this with you. Because it costs $40 to ship them, and so it's too expensive. There's no real wrong way. And also, I like to, you'll hear me say, if you do this long enough with us, if you see some of the trainings, I have a saying, anything worth doing well is worth doing terribly at first. You know, so, you know, a lot of people think they got to be perfect at it, they got to do it right, and they start getting their left brain in there and being all judgmental. You can't really do this wrong. It's just a practice. So you just keep, and pretty soon the brain just learns how to do it. And you slip in and out of it, and it becomes a useful tool. Sometimes it takes up to 3 visits for the brain to actually follow the algorithm. But we know after 3 visits the brain's doing it.
is there a certain amount of sessions in each one? So like one that's for losing weight? I mean,
We usually say listen to the same one for a week, but some people are impatient. You can listen to a different one every day if you wanted to, and then just cycle back through the program. Like for instance, our insomnia program, which we call Better Sleep, that program is 5 weeks long. But if they want to listen to each one, just listen to them in rotation, and then after 5 weeks, it's probably going to be over. I mean, we've never had anybody make it 5 weeks without sleeping through the night. So I'm sure it's going to happen at some point, but you know, the brain learns how to follow. That session actually drops you off in delta and doesn't bring you back. So it's training the brain to go to sleep, shut off, shut down, go to sleep. And some of you might have seen the PM programs that are in the bonus section. Those are also, they drop you off in delta. And, that's why some people will listen to them and go, I feel all groggy afterwards. I go, yeah, because it's taking you to delta. And they're meant to be used at night, so right before you go to sleep. And the AM ones are really designed to use in the morning to wake you up. You shouldn't need to de-stress after you sleep. So that's why the 10-minute sessions in the morning, just to get your brain woke up and get you going.
and I saw, like I said, I saw the app where it has all that, but that's what I was asking about, like the support. How do you know which one you listen to in the morning? Which one you listen to?
We have a new app, so you're going to be like the first group that hears this. I don't even know if Terry knows it. You were at our event in New Bern, right?
Yeah.
So it was supposed to be out in January, but we keep going round and round with Apple. I love Apple. I have a lot of Apple products, but they are hard to work with. So we're trying to get our app approved. That one is actually going to be a little different than the app we have now. You will select what you want to do, and it tells you which session to do next. Our new app. And it has a favorite button. So if you like them, you can hit a little heart, and it makes your own playlist, so you can have your own list of ones you like. So so that will be, it's going to be released any day as soon as, I guess, we talk with Steve Jobs from the Afterworld and get us approved. They said our old app wouldn't be approved right now with their standards that they have. So we're going to have some in-app purchases. I guess they want to be able to make a little money off the app, and then they'll approve it. You know, it's kind of like a religious order. They want their tithing, so they get it. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. I'm going to get going too because I'm going to drive to New York City tonight. All right. Well, it was great meeting you all. Hopefully, see you again.